Adar, Mishenichnas Adar Marbim Besimcha. There's a month, a joyous month, a fantastic month, a one with a mazal, let's just say, and it's a month to be fruitful, to be multiple, and actually interesting is one of the symbols of this specific Hebrew month itself happens to be the dog, the fish in of its own, just to, let's say, bring about fruitful multiplying, especially when it comes to simcha in of itself and shefa bracha in of itself, and much can be said over within regards to this beautiful Hebrew month in of its own right, and it's a month of good fortune. Very much we have to point out just from the start of this. Now, the month of Adar, obviously, if we go by the civil year calendar, it happens to be the 6th month, and it's the 12th month of the religious year on the Hebrew calendar, which actually corresponds, obviously, usually we are in the month of March in the Gregorian calendar, respectively. So it's actually interesting. The month's name, like all the other names from the Hebrew calendar, was adopted, obviously, during the time period of the Babylonian captivity. In the Babylonian calendar, the name was called Ara, Adaru, or Adar, the month of Adar. Obviously, in leap years, it is preceded by a 30-day intercalary month named Adar Aleph. Obviously, we've got an Adar Aleph and Adar Bet when it's the leap year, respectively. And very, very important to point out within regards to this. Also, it's known as Adar Aleph, or Adar Sheni, we could say, or Adar Bet. But this happens to be this specific year that we have just one Adar. We have to point out within regards to this. Many traditions we can explore and various different customs, as I say. And we know that during the time period of the second Bet HaMikdash, second temple, there was a Jewish custom to make a public proclamation on the first day of Adar, respectively, of the month of Adar, reminding the people at that point in time that they are to prepare the annual monetary offering to the Bet HaMikdash temporary, known as the Machatzit HaShekel, also respectively. So we're going to explore some of the happenings that actually happened on this month, but we know the mazal of the Jewish people is the luck of the Jewish people is stronger in this Hebrew month of Adar. Now we know that when there was an arch enemy of the Jewish people, obviously that was Haman, he was drawing lots, he was drawing a lottery for an opportune time to wage, let's say, his personal war against the Jewish people. He was very, very happy that the date of the deadly decree would fall in the month of Adar. Why was this? The reason he was joyous at that point in time was that he found that every other month on the Jewish calendar had some specific great date to, let's say, aid the Jewish people. But in this Hebrew month of Adar, he saw that Moshe had passed away on the 7th of Adar. He knew that was in his, so seemingly it's a bad connotation. So Haman was so sure that this date would cause, let's say, misfortune and trouble for the Jewish people, that he made Adar the deadline for the decree. However, what Haman, the wicked Haman, did not know is that Moshe was also born on the 7th of Adar, which made the month an auspicious one for the Jewish people, the Jewish nation, not only during the events of Purim, but also obviously here in modern day, as we're going to learn about. We can explore some of the highlights of what happened on this month. How did, let's say, the joy of Moshe's birthday cancel out the misfortune that the 7th was also the day of his passing over here, friends? How could this actually be? And what are the special qualities of Adar that grants the Jewish people good fortune? Adar is under constellation of fish, which we spoke about from the beginning. Haman saw nothing particularly lucky or beneficial in the constellation of the fish. He was threatening to swallow up the Jewish people like a fish swallows food. But he didn't see that there was a bigger fish and that he would be swallowed up himself, just as larger fish swallow up smaller fish. So the tragedy, let's just say, of Moshe's passing is swallowed up by his birth. For that joy is greater than the sadness of mourning. And it's actually interesting that great Lubavitcher Rebbe will actually point out that a person's soul shines stronger on his or her birthday. Naturally, Moshe's birthday would be on that date. But the aspect of the soul that is contained within a person is actually a spark of the person's root. That's the neshama, which stays above. This neshama that is above the earthly neshama is called mazal. Now, a person's mazal is stronger on the birthday because the mazal, which drips vitality into the soul, and the soul are in perfect alignment on that day. Very interesting. I just received a bracha, someone's birthday. I was speaking about a Chabad Lubavitch rabbi. He actually gave me a special blessing on his birthday. Only a few days ago, he very, very kindly gave me a bracha, a rabbi based in London. So the importance of giving blessings on someone's birthday. Even though we all individually have birthdays, Moshe's birthday is like the collective birthday of the Jewish people. How is this so, friends? Because the leader of the Jewish people is equal to the Jewish people collectively, as we learn about, I think, in the book of Bamidbar in chapter 21, verse 21. Rashi is going to actually expound on that. Since every generation has a spark of the neshama, the soul of Moshe, his birthday is also the birth of the essence of the souls of the Jewish people. This is why the mazal of the Jewish people is stronger on the month of Adar. Now, it's actually interesting. This month of Adar is also the month of completion. Let's say rectifying the lunar year to the solar cycle and readying us for the revelation. In leap years, obviously, we know there's 2 Adars, Adar Aleph, Adar Bet, or Adar Sheni. In such a year, what was incomplete reaches its full potential. Just as the Jewish people are frequently compared to the moon, Adar is an auspicious time to reach one's spiritual potential. Now, also, the 2 Adars together have a staggering 60 days. Now, let's say, for example, let's give a cute idea with regards to this. If an unkosher liquid falls into a pot, the mixture can still be considered kosher if the unkosher part is less than a ratio of 1/60th. Now, the 60 days of these 2 months reflect the ability of this number to nullify negativity of it. But the sages have said that the Jewish people are beyond mazal, and there is no, let's say, ayin in Hebrew, a constellation that is associated with them. This is why the Jewish people were able to sow great sacrifice during the Purim festival in of itself, and at all times the capacity for self-sacrifice is beyond logic, fathom logic in itself. This greatness is hinted in the name of Adar, which is spelled, how is it spelled? Aleph, Dalet, Reish, Avir. Those are 3 letters. The Aleph represents the power, the awesomeness of God, which may seem to separate from everyday existence. The Dalet and the Reish form the word Dar, which means to dwell. And the Aleph, let's say, or God's unlimited power, aims to create a dwelling place in this limited world, respectively. Now, it's interesting, Moses will try to accomplish this in the last 7 days of the month of Adar, when he worked to build the Mishkan, tabernacle. The divine presence wasn't revealed in the Mishkan, in tabernacle, so he kept rearranging and rebuilding it. And it was actually on the last day, the divine presence, the Shekhinah, was revealed in the tabernacle. The last 7 days of Adar, during which Moshe spent building, let's say, the tabernacle, corresponded to the 7 generations during which the Shekhinah was not revealed. God's intention was that he should have a dwelling place in this world, and this was being accomplished at the end of this month of Adar. So Haman, the wicked Haman, his mistake in thinking that Moshe's passing ruined the month of Adar for the Jewish people was actually to our benefit. It was he chose to set the decree in the month of the greatest mazal for the Jewish people. And this actually teaches us that this month of Adar is a propitious month for protection, for improving ourselves, and for simcha, for joy also, which reaches greater and greater levels. As if it happens to be 2 Adars, it will be even greater potentiality. But just even in the single Adar itself, the potential is absolutely infinite of joy, and so on and so forth. Now, many great events actually, or famous events, occurred on this month in of itself. Let's explore a few of them as highlights before we conclude this presentation. We know that first of Adar, obviously Rosh Chodesh Adar, very important time in itself. It was marked the passing of 2 great rabbis. First of all, the Ibn Ezra and the Shach. I think it was in the 2nd of Adar, Jerusalem fell to Nebuchadnezzar, and I think that was when Jeconiah was captured. That was another significant date. There was a famous Rabbi Yaakov Yehezkiah Greenwald of Pupa would pass away also on the 2nd of Adar. The second Bet HaMikdash was completed on the 3rd of Adar. Very, very joyous day. And there'll be that completion over here. And it's actually interesting, Maharam's body was ransomed 14 years after his death by Alexander ben Shlomo, if I'm not mistaken, Wimphin. This was on the 4th of Adar. There was the passing of Rabbi Leib Serres, a disciple of the famous Rabbi Israel Baal Shem Tov, one of the great hidden tzaddikim. And Rabbi Leibs spent his life wandering from place to place to raise money for the ransoming of imprisoned Jews and the support of hidden tzaddikim. He passed away on the 4th of Adar. Very interesting enough. I think the 7th of Adar was an awesome day, the birth of Moses. It was also the Hilula of Moshe Rabbeinu also. And there was another famous rabbi that passed away on the 7th of Adar, Rabbi Isaac Taub of Kalov, who was the founder of the Kalever Hasidic dynasty, and was a student famous of Rabbi Leib Asaris in and of itself. Now, at the 9th of Adar, very interesting enough, I think on the 9th of Adar there was a famous discussion from the house of Hillel and house of Shammai. That's naturally Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai, respectively. And there would be let's say, very robust debate, especially on 18 legal matters, if I'm not mistaken, on that one. And very, very interesting enough. And the 11th of Adar would mark the passing of another famous rabbi, Rabbi Eliezer Lippman, or also known as Eliezer Lipa, if I'm not mistaken. He was the father of the prominent Hasidic rabbis, Rabbi Elimelech of Lezinsk and Rabbi Zusha of Hanipol. Obviously, the 13th of Adar itself was the date of the war between the Jews and the enemies of Persia. Obviously, we learned about that in Megillat Esther in chapter number 9. Also, I think 13th of Adar also marks a Yom Nicanor, which is the Maccabees defeating the Greek Syrian general Nicanor at the Battle of Adassa during the Maccabi revolt. So that happens to be a significant date also in Jewish history. I think 13th of Adar is also the date, the Hilul of Rav Moshe Feinstein, one of the great American rabbis. Obviously, 14th of Adar is a Purim victory. 15th of Adar is a Purim victory celebrated in Shushan, which obviously we've spoken about on various occasions before. The 15th of Adar is known as a Jerusalem Gate Day. King Agrippa, let's say there was a construction of the gate, which would begin on that date, of the wall of Jerusalem, and it was celebrated as a holiday, respectively. The 17th of Adar was known as Yom Adar, the day the Jewish people left Persia, following the Purim story. Something that we have to point out, and it's actually interesting. It's also auspicious with Shefa and Bracha. 20th of Adar was a date when Choni HaMa'agel, Choni the circle maker, would actually praying for the rain, which we actually very much learn about in Tractate Ta'anit on page 23. The Purim Vince, the downfall of the Vincent's Fettmilch, would actually occur on the 20th of Adar, and the triumphant return of the Jews of Frankfurt under the imperial protection would occur. And that day was established as a community Purim for generations. And it's actually to this day, I think the Washington Heights community does not recite Tachanun on this day. The 20th of Adar marks the passing of the famous Bach. The 21st of Adar is the death of Rabbi Elimelech of Lezinsk. The 23rd of Adar was a significant date when the Mishkan assembled for the first time, and the 7 days of inauguration would actually begin. Interesting. For the 23rd of Adar was the date of the death of Rabbi Yitzchak Meir Alter, the first rabbi of Get dynasty. And very, very interesting. I think there was other significant dates. I'm not pointing out all the significant dates. Nebuchadnezzar would actually finally die, thank God, on the 25th of Adar, as we learned about in the book of Jeremiah in chapter 52. Also, with the passing of the Hilula of Rabbi Avram Gershon of Kitov, the brother-in-law of the Baal Shem Tov, passed away on the 25th of Adar. The 27th of Adar was the date of death of Zedekiah, obviously in Babylonian captivity, of Merodach, Nebuchadnezzar's son and successor. I think would go on and freed him and his nephew Jeconiah on the 27th of Adar, but Zedekiah died that same day. And it's actually interesting, the 28th of Adar was a Talmudic holiday, if I'm not mistaken, to commemorate the rescinding of a Roman decree against Torah study, Brit Milah, ritual circumcision, and the keeping of the Shabbat. The decree was revoked through the efforts of famous Rabbi Yehuda ben Shamua and his colleague, as we learn about, I think, in Tractate Ta'anit, page 18, and Rosh Hashanah on the page number 19. And it's actually interesting, on the 20th of Adar, the Jews of Cairo were saved from the plot of Ahmad Pasha, who sought revenge against a Jewish minister, Abraham de Castro, who had apparently reported over to Selim II of Ahmad's plan to cede from the Ottoman Empire. To this date, the 28th of Adar is considered the Purim of Cairo, with festivities including a special Megillah reading. So very, very interesting. These are a few highlights also of the Hebrew month of Adar. And it's an auspicious time. Mishenichnas Adar Marbim B'Simcha. Wishing all a Chodesh Tov U'Mvarach and a happy new month. It's an auspicious time. Make the most of it. Learn. It's a month of Purim, also the Jewish festival of Purim. Very, very fantastic and very joyous. On this note, wishing you all a happy month and Chodesh Tov U'Mvarach. And thanks for watching, everyone. And don't forget to subscribe to our community.